Hello everyone and welcome back. This is just an extra video for me to kind of give my final thoughts on all 20 of the chemistry videos I recorded over the course of the past year. So yeah, I have a bunch of bullet points listed here that I want to touch on, and if there's anything I forget to say, I'll probably post about it in a pinned comment like I usually do. Before I begin, though, I think it might be worth mentioning that I did go through all the videos and timestamp them. You'll find those timestamps in my pinned comment under each video, so that'll make it easier to skip to whatever parts you need to review. But yeah, hopefully that makes up for the videos being quote-unquote too long. Anyway, let's get started. So first I want to talk about the things I believe went well. First thing that came to mind for me was the fact that I was able to complete the series in time, quote-unquote. And what I mean by that, it was kind of one of my secondary goals. There wasn't really a time limit. It's not like anybody was forcing me to do these videos. But I kind of gave myself a self-imposed time limit of finish before school that current year finished the course. Because I didn't want to have, let's say, 2/3 of the course covered and then the last third I leave the students hanging to dry, the ones that were following the videos along with whatever chemistry class they were taking. I didn't want to do that to them, so that's kind of important to me, and I'm glad I was able to pull it off, because there were times when it looked like it wasn't going to happen. There were some videos with weeks or maybe even months between them, and I was just struggling to find those long stretches of uninterrupted time until I came up with the genius idea to just block out an entire day and dedicate that to preparing or recording or both. And yeah, that's what ultimately fixed things for me, and from that point on, you may have noticed the pace picked up and I was able to finish in time. So that's one thing I'm grateful for. Another thing that I think went well was that I got to cover the material thoroughly. Originally, I was planning to make the videos maybe 2 to 3 hours long, but I guess it just naturally evolved into this one chapter per video style, which turned out to be, and I calculated this, an average of 4 hours, 58 minutes, and 15 seconds across all 20 of those videos. So, average video length was about 5 hours. I didn't plan it that way, it just happened naturally, and some people might complain about the length, but I like it. I like being able to have, an entire chapter's worth of content contained in a single video. It feels more organized to me, so that's not something I regret, no matter how many people will complain about it. I mean, now that I've added the timestamps, I think I've eliminated most people's reasons for complaining, but you can't please everybody. What else? On covering material thoroughly, there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. So another thing that I had originally intended, and I think I accomplished this for the most part, was I wanted to style these videos. I wanted them to kind of be in the same style as my tutoring sessions with students, but because I knew I only had to record these once and then I'd be able to post them on the internet forever, that gave me the incentive to do a little bit of extra work. If I only have to do it once, I might as well go all out, quote unquote. I don't think I went all out, but I did extra things that I wouldn't normally do. So, I looked up good visuals that I normally wouldn't present to students. I did a couple of experiments that I normally wouldn't do for my tutees. And the reason I don't do them normally is just because there's so much time involved in preparing for those things. Preparing and setting up things like the red cabbage experiment in particular I mean, I'd have to go out shopping for red cabbage because that's not something I normally buy. And, having to do it just once and have the recording forever, that's perfect. So it was well worth it to do it that time for the sake of the recording. And yeah, speaking of thoroughness also, I wasn't 100% thorough. There are some things that I missed. Small things, yes, but still, there were things that I missed. And I do plan on eventually recording some, I guess you could call them bonus videos for particular parts. Anything that felt like it had something missing. First one that comes to mind is for the electrochemistry video, I forgot to talk about how to choose the optimal pair of electrodes when you have like 4 different metals to choose from and you want to build the best electrochemical cell or the one for which the reaction is most spontaneous. But I'm not going to explain that in this video. That will come out whenever it comes out. But things like that. Tiny things that I forgot that your teacher probably covered if you were taking a course while watching the videos. But if you weren't taking a course while watching these videos, then yeah, I probably have to record something for that. So that'll come in due time. Well, probably not in due time. I'm probably going to procrastinate a lot on those since they're little things. It's easy to deprioritize them. But now I'm rambling. Let's move on. What else do I have here? Another thing I was glad I did was occasionally I would go off on tangential topics. I think a lot of people may have been a little annoyed at all my references to physics especially, but I don't regret that. I have a lot of physics students who I'm sure were grateful that I made the connection between physics and chemistry for them whenever there was one. So I don't have any regrets about that. Other tangential things, I think there was a point where we talked about Tesla versus Edison. And, just things like that. Extra things that weren't necessarily part of the curriculum, but it breathes more life into the course. It makes things a little bit more interesting. And again, being able to do it in a video format gives me the freedom to do that more easily. It's not as easy to bring those things up in my typical tutoring session when, we're working with a set time limit and there's usually pressure to get things done in time for an upcoming exam or whatever. So that's another thing I'm glad I was able to do. Let me see. What else do I have here? Well, I kind of already brought that up, so I'm not going to talk about that. I guess there's one more bullet point then in terms of what went well, and that's accomplishing my original goal, which was to create a course that can help people learn independently. I think being able to learn things independently is really important, especially in the United States where we have an education system that is so messed up that if you don't know how to teach yourself, if you don't know how to learn things on your own, then, chances are things aren't going to work out for you the way they should. So yeah, I think it's very important to encourage and support independent learners, and I think this video series helps with that. I think this gives you more than enough material to help you teach yourself. Okay, so what went wrong? I already kind of mentioned this, but there are things I forgot to cover, such as the optimal electrode pairs for the electrochemistry video. So I'm going to need to go back and do some extra videos to fill in those gaps. I guess another thing that went wrong, at least for me, is that I'm not really used to putting my voice out there on the internet, so I'm sure somebody out there is going to keep a counter for how many times I coughed in my videos. I felt like I was coughing quite a lot, which I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's better, it sounds better to me than the sound of clearing my throat. But, you know, I've gotten more used to talking to people online, especially with the pandemic that's taking place around the time of this recording. I've been in a lot of online conversations, and I think the coughing was more of a nervous habit than anything else, and I think I'm kind of over it. Another nervous habit that I started to improve on but haven't quite gotten better about is I noticed in the videos, especially the earlier ones, I tried to keep on talking, and I didn't really allow myself to have a lot of long pauses. Like right now. That wasn't planned out, by the way. That pause was just whatever. I just had this, I don't even know how to describe it. I just had this mentality that I had to keep on talking, and if I had a pause that was longer than, I don't know, 3-4 seconds, that it would be too awkward and too boring. And especially considering the fact that I didn't want to edit any of the videos. I wanted to save time by recording them in one shot. The inability to cut those pauses out, I guess, helped make me extra nervous about them, so sometimes I rambled on a little bit too much. This doesn't include my habit of repeating myself. That was on purpose, and that I don't regret. That's a habit that I've developed over my years of tutoring. Repetition is really important because a lot of students I've worked with have ADHD, and even the ones who don't. Everybody has a limited attention span, and sometimes repeating things can help bring people back in when they're zoned out. So that's on purpose. I don't regret that. If you're annoyed by it, sorry, there's a reason for it, and it's important. But the needless rambling, sometimes I would use too many words to explain things when normally I would be able to offer a shorter, simpler explanation. But all in all, I don't think it was that big of a problem, and I did start improving towards the end. So hopefully that trend will continue and I'll get more comfortable talking. I guess another factor that may have played into it is, again, I tried to structure this sort of like my tutoring sessions, but I didn't have a student who could reply back to me and ask me questions and stuff like that, so that may have contributed to it, that I'm not used to doing all of the talking. But yeah, that's just another thing that I thought about while reflecting on all this. What else? Well, this isn't something that went wrong per se, it's just something that I didn't plan for from the get-go. As you saw with the few experiments that I did do in this series, I don't have a lot of sophisticated lab equipment at my disposal, so one thing that I couldn't do in this series is do like complete labs to show you all the different tools and how they're used and all that. But the good news is I do have some resources for you. I will post links to them in the description of this video. A playlist and 2 channels that are just a bunch of lab experiments that you can look at. And the point isn't to memorize the steps of the experiments you see. The point is to watch enough of those videos that you develop a sense of how to use the common tools of the trade, how to use all the different lab equipment, And you'll know that you've learned enough when you can think up your own experiment, when you can think of some sort of chemistry-related question that you want to answer, and you can come up with the steps and figure out what equipment you're going to need and just design your own experiment from scratch. If you can do that after watching enough of those videos, then I think you'll have learned, the essentials, and you'll be fine in the lab whenever you have to do it in college or maybe even in high school. What else do we have? Well, I wouldn't say... Well, actually I would. This is something that went wrong. I think it was video number 12, the reaction rates video. That's the only video that got edited, and the only reason it was edited is because it needed to be edited. And oh boy, editing that video was a nightmare. It has 2 edits in it. One is a bit more sneaky and harder to notice, but the other one, I think a lot of people will be able to catch it because there was a video cue where my hand just magically teleports. Was it my hand? No, I think it was like the backboard on above which I place my papers. So yeah, some people may have already noticed that was an edit. For whatever reason that day, everybody just decided they wanted to interrupt me, and normally when that happens I'll be 10-15 minutes into a recording and I'll just start over, but in this case the interruption happened farther in, and I thought, no way am I starting over. Let's just push through and I'll edit it. And oh boy, the editing was a nightmare. It had to render overnight, and I had to try 2 different pieces of editing software. The first one kept on failing at rendering the video, and then I had to use another one that I was less familiar with, so I had to spend all this time teaching myself how to do a basic cut in this new software, and yeah, that was not fun, but there you go. Only 1 video was edited. All the other ones were recorded in one shot, including the longest video, which was like 7 hours and 20 minutes, which taught me that I guess I can go for pretty long once I'm in the zone. What else do I have here? I think we're getting close to the end of my bullet points. Yeah, I guess the rest is just kind of extraneous stuff. So, I do plan on adding cards at the ends of the videos to make things a little bit easier to navigate. The next video, the previous video, all that stuff. And maybe, if I find the time for it later, I'll also add iCards at all those points in my videos where I refer you back to older videos. But, not making any promises in terms of iCards, but I'll definitely add some end cards at the very least. And I guess here's a fun fact. How many trees did we kill? I didn't actually calculate this, but I'll post a link probably in the description that'll give you a conversion factor you can use. You can practice your dimensional analysis one last time, starting with the fact that we ended up using 385 pieces of paper over the course of all 20 of those videos. And I'm sure somebody is gonna spend time going through each and every video and counting each sheet I use individually. Don't bother, because part of that count is papers that you didn't see on screen. Like I mentioned before, there were times when I would start recording and then 10-15 minutes into it, I just wasn't feeling it and I would start all over. So the papers that were used in those failed attempts were also counted among these 385 pages, and you won't see those in the videos. But yeah, 385 pages. I'll give you a link to, I think it's an article from How Stuff Works that gives you a good estimate of how many papers you can get per tree, and you can calculate how many trees I killed. Or, if you think about it another way, how many trees are saved because it's in video form, so now you can reuse it over and over and over again without having to reuse the actual paper. But yeah, there's a little fun fact for you. And finally, a question of, will I do more of this in the future? Will I do more tutorials? Well, honestly, this process was exhausting, but it was worth it overall. So I will definitely do tutorial videos again, but I don't want to make that the central theme of this channel. I don't want this to be another one of those tutorial channels that you just come to whenever you have homework that you're stuck on. I do want to make videos that are more, how should I say this, topical, if that makes any sense. Like, I'll have a topic and I'll talk about it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, however long, depends on the topic itself. And yeah, so that's what I mainly want to do, but I will do more tutorial videos when I feel ready for another one. I don't think I will do physics, just because there's plenty of good physics material out there. Part of the reason I decided to start with chemistry is because I looked around on YouTube and I couldn't find anything that was what I wanted. But for physics, there are plenty of good resources. The first one I would recommend is a YouTube channel called Flipping Physics. So if you're taking a physics course, there's your recommendation there. But what I might do is computer science, specifically the science part of computer science, and this is probably going to be more relevant to college students than high school students. There's just a lot of theoretical and math-based courses in computer science that a lot of college students struggle with because they have a lot of practical experience. They practice programming. Some of them start programming as early as 12 years old, and they're really comfortable with that. The math is very basic: addition, multiplication, division, subtraction, occasionally exponents and square roots, but mostly algebra-based stuff. And then they get into this heavy theoretical stuff and they get really lost. Some of them just outright quit because of it. And I haven't seen a lot of coverage for those kinds of courses. So when I do another tutorial series, in all likelihood, it's going to be computer science next. And I guess to give you an idea of what that's like, I do have a really old video that I can link you to. It's an unlisted video, and it's actually the very first video that I made for this channel. I made it for a computer science student after realizing that I had the wrong idea when helping her with an assignment. So I kind of made that video as a kind of apology/correction, but it'll give you a general idea of what this theoretical computer science stuff is that I plan on covering, for those of you that are actually interested in that. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. If I remember anything else that's worth mentioning, I will post about that in a pinned comment. But without further ado, this is the end for this series. This has been Al the Tutor, reminding you once again that ignorance is not bliss. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.